But if y'all want to kick this off, who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I'm Chris Nichols. I am a senior manager of SEO at Cox Automotive. I've been with the company for roughly 9 years now. Before this, I was doing e-commerce for some big brands like Star Trek, and ASPCA, and Gilbert. If you hear anything, it's my dog chewing over there. He's going crazy over a hamburger toy. Other than that, I enjoy automotive. I've been in the space for 15 years now, and I also like the box.
Hey everyone, I am Matt Grabiak. I'm the one out of the group that lives in Durham, so I'm local. I probably haven't met most of you because I just moved here last July, just like a few days before the last in-person meetup. So I was able to go to that, but we haven't had anything in a little while. So definitely looking forward to that starting up again. But been doing SEO for about a dozen years. Been kind of all over the place, worked at agencies, small businesses, moved to enterprise, starting with Dick's Sporting Goods, and then finally made my way here. I am a principal product manager here. So I work with the listings pages, all of the pages that have vehicles displayed that you can actually purchase the vehicle from. Work with things like indexation, faceted navigation, robots text files, stuff like that.
I guess I'll go. Hi, I'm Ellen Edmonds. I work on the Kelley Blue Book side. I work as senior SEO product manager on service and repair. You may not know that Kelley Blue Book has a service and repair section, so please go check it out. Primarily because it's new, a lot of that is growing product. I've been in primarily automotive SEO. I got my start in SEO with a random Twixbar press release in about 5 minutes, but I've been in it for about 10 years or so and love it. So I guess that's about it.
Keith, you or me? Okay. Hi, my name is Melissa Fash. I've been in SEO for 17 years now. I'm old. I started out with an agency that I created. Then I moved into a lot of different things that related to SEO. I was an editor at SEJ, at Moz, at Authority Labs, at SEMrush. Yes, that's how I say it. I was a community manager at PubCon for 5 years while doing SEO and consulting and being an editor. I've been at Cox Automotive for about 18 months. I love it. It's the best thing. I would love to stay here and retire here. So right now, my job is I'm the lead SEO content manager. I oversee content strategy for Kelley Blue Book and Autotrader. And I think that's all there is to say.
Oh, there's so much more to say, Melissa. So much more.
I love Star Wars. Chris likes boxing. I like Star Wars.
Yes, Melissa and I are both the sort of the nerds of the team. My name is Keith Good. I have been doing SEO since the 90s. And I've been doing in-house SEO since around 2006, 2007. I've worked for companies such as VRBO, AMD, Dell, IBM. I took a 1.5 year hiatus to be the SEO evangelist for SEO Clarity. And I am now the principal SEO product manager for Cox Automotive, specifically working on dealer.com, which is a platform for about 13,000 dealer websites. So while many of you are working on one or just a few websites, I'm responsible for the success of 13,000 websites. So that's a lot of fun. I've been a conference industry conference speaker for 8 years now, speaking at PubCon, SMX, Digital Summit, DMO, and a few other international conferences. And so I'm very happy to be here tonight. And this is a great team that I work with, by the way. I don't know if it comes across with our introductions, but we are a really great team, and I'm very honored to work with these folks. So back to you, Patrick.
Awesome. I think I need to pin everyone to make this work. So I think everyone's going to be on the screen at once. There didn't seem to be any auto switcher. Oh, look, I can only pin 4 people. Frank, we will figure this out another time, but I will try and rotate who is pinned, and I have a cat here also. You want to say hey real quick? Say hey to the live stream since you're going to be here, apparently. These are always fun. Okay, I can unpin myself at least and pin one other. Cool. Yeah, it looks like I can only pin up to 4 people at once. No idea what to do about that. And there doesn't seem to be an auto switcher. But let's get started with the questions. I'm going to do an icebreaker first. Melissa, what do you think about search results for yellow cars for sale?
I was very upset. Could you tell?
I was.
I just don't know what Google's doing. I don't understand the search right now. They're a mess, and so I don't understand international sites that I see. Some guy seen in Israel, the exact same one. So all of the team has discussed it. We are irritated.
Yeah, just a little thing on Twitter where I think Danny Sullivan responded, but basically Google results are showing a bunch of Australia and UK results for that search for whatever reason. But anyway, back to topic. How do you get buy-in from leadership to build a strong SEO team? Like, I think y'all have probably one of the strongest in-house SEO teams of any company right now. How did that happen?
That's been a long time in the making. A number of years ago, like the team was never this big. And we were separated by brand. So like there was only 2 people handling Kelley Blue Book at the time. There's only a couple people, I think 3 people handling Autotrader. And over time, through some, conversations, and it also helps that our SVP also has a history in SEO. And I want to say right around when mobile first was taking off and you had to get rid of your MDOT site, the company really started to invest in building a team. And then it was just been constant education of the C-level and making sure we're driving the right metrics. And for us, one of our primary KPIs is value, right? We have an internal consumer value metric that we look at. So anything that we do, especially when we need buy-in from that level, we tie all back to how much of value add can we generate through our ask. So when we look at that lens, it becomes a little bit easier to get buy-in for us.
Yeah, and Chris is definitely the right person to answer that because he's the veteran on the team that's been around and helped build it. All of us are still fairly new to the team, so he's the one that helped that process out.
That's awesome. We have a question in the chat, and please try and use the Q&A section, but I can read from the chat too. How do you measure value?
Yeah, so seeing that's an internal metric, and the way that our sites generate revenue is through like subscription-based or ad impressions. We're able to work with finance to understand how much a lead is worth through various channels. So like we know an email is worth X amount, we know a chat is worth something else, and we know a page view on certain ones are worth another value. So we take all those values and then we use that to create our value metric. Yes, monetary value. I saw that one pop up.
I lost how to get back here from the chat. So I was like, what do I do? Someone raised their hand a minute ago. Do you want to try that again? Ask your question live. The dog has a question.
That was one of my dogs.
All right, let's give this a shot with this raised hand. Don, I think you're on. Oh, it's coming in.
Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, Don also works with us. Yes, what's up, Don?
No, I don't. No, I don't. What are you talking about? This isn't Don Roberts. What do you think about sway within the organization, product, marketing, engineering at the enterprise level?
What do you mean by sway?
Well, obviously, like the tea leaves change within an organization. Sometimes it's more about marketing. Sometimes it's about sales that's driving things. And I guess that maybe your kind of experience going through seeing the changes at Cox Auto, where sales had a very strong sway in driving product, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of like, we used to be in marketing, and now we're in product. And maybe your thoughts on that kind of shift.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging, right? Because I do have to think about how we can equip sales to help generate more of that subscription-based service, or increase the monthly recurring revenue through the current subscribers that they have. So we have to think more holistically. We can't just think about like just our SEO vertical. We need to think about like more of a T-shaped, like how does what we do impact the others, and then how can we support the other channels, right? Like how do we work with marketing or our paid teams to make sure that we're covering everything that we need to, or we're getting support where like, hey, we're having a hard time ranking for this term. Like, can we throw some money at it while we work through this, and vice versa. The sales questions can be difficult because, obviously we're a big national brand and we rank nationally for a lot of things, but at the individual dealership level, they're more interested in their market, right? So like, how are we appearing in Buffalo, New York, right? How are we supporting those individual businesses? So it becomes a little bit more difficult in those regards. Like, Matt does a great job with the listings and, how we think about local markets. But it's definitely changed. I just think we need a holistic approach that combines everything and just pushes the business forward, opposed to where you see some businesses or companies have more of a siloed setup. And we just need to get rid of all that and just move forward as one.
Cool. There's the top one in the Q&A right now. Victor asks, how big is the SEO team and how's it structured? Sounds like y'all work kind of with everyone, but where do y'all actually sit within the organization?
So there's a couple of SEO teams, I should say. So because dealer.com is also part of Cox Automotive, like they're more advertising side, or not advertising, agency type side. So they work with individual dealerships. That team is over 80 people, all internal folk. They're not contractors. And then they have a copywriting team that's 50 something people. On our side, I want to say it's maybe 12. In the way that we're structured, at least enterprise, is we have it by release train. So we obviously work with product. We're in an agile system. So we really split everybody by like areas of expertise and what release train they fall under. So Matt falls under our core marketplace release train because it's listings. So he sits on the listing side or the core marketplace side. And then somebody that might be in audience, like Melissa with content, so that she would sit on the audience side of the house. So it's not really complex. It's just more by how we define our release trains.
I think it's also interesting where we sit in the organization as well. We actually sit in the product organization, which previously has not been the case. Patrick, you and I, we were in the marketing team back at IBM, and
even
that,
analytics at one point.
right, and even analytics at one point, and that really it did reflect in how much priority we were able to get sometimes because of where we sat in the organization. So I find it very interesting that we now sit in product, and I don't know, Chris. I mean, I know there are other things that we're probably trying to get priority on, but I don't get a sense that we're having the types of struggles we had. We have now. Our struggles are not now what I would have experienced previously as a marketing person.
No, we saw a huge shift right around when the pandemic happened, and everybody was pulling back budgets because they didn't know what was going on, right? And I'm sure like every company was really holding on to what they would normally spend just so they could focus on like maintaining the status quo with the business. And we saw a huge shift from our executive team where we put more focus onto SEO. And we got a ton of work pushed through. I want to say, I remember it vaguely. I was in California, February, right before everything shut down. And then the next month, my travel schedule got cut off, and we were pushing a ton of work through engineering where we got almost all the capacity for a little bit to make sure that we had a solid footing and the basis was strong.
Also, I like Victor's little icon there, Kendo stuff. I see Kendo armor in Victor's little HubSpot photo. It's kind of cool.
No one knows what Victor Pan looks like. I think actually there was a big industry roundup, quotes from a bunch of SEOs, and they put the wrong Victor Pan. They pulled a picture from LinkedIn that wasn't him. Random fun fact. Okay, next question is from Gene. It says, Cox has 25-ish brands. How do you handle that everyone wants to be number one on a search result, but you have different products in similar industries? I like this question. To what extent does your recruiting teams integrate using SEO to make sure applicants see posted positions?
I'll take a stab at that one. Well, yeah, for the first part, I'd say it's very much about intent between brands. So we're very conscious about how our brands and what they have to offer the consumer and how that might fit into specific queries with specific intents. So I think we definitely do a lot of communicating and planning, in similar products across major brands. You have to, you can't operate thinking they're both going to operate and get number one and number two. It's more of where does it make sense for one brand to fill in where maybe it doesn't make sense for the other one. So we do a lot of, intent-based research for that.
I guess I'll take the recruiting one. So recruiting, we actually write the job descriptions ourselves. And then we work with recruiting, obviously, to get them up. We do think about how we're using certain terms and the way that it would impact the type of SEO we're looking to hire at the time. But we really have had a lot of success in just bringing in good candidates from either word of mouth or from LinkedIn or even on Twitter. Because we go pretty heavy on Twitter and in LinkedIn when we actually have a job opening.
Yeah, to add to that, Chris, corporate actually did just recently reach out to us to make sure that we were doing our best for branded queries related to where all of our offices were, to make sure that we do appear for searches related to jobs in that area.
Cool. Sorry, trying to handle Twitter and everything too. I'm curious, like you have so many SEOs and you're focusing in a bunch of different things. Like what is kind of like your ideal team? Are you there? Like, is there something you're looking for, or like something particularly you focus on?
You looking for a job, Patrick?
Yeah. I don't know if there's something we're looking for. I would say this. Chris and Tessa, Tessa's our director, are really good at choosing people that are a good cultural fit, right? We all get along really well. Like if I had a relationship like this with my brother, it would be great. Like we're a happy team. But the other thing they did, which was great, is Tessa said something from the beginning, like all of you specialize in different areas. We're all here to learn from one another. There's no pressure. I don't have to know all the technical stuff Matt knows because I don't want to know it. I know what I know. So they allow us to specialize in what we know, learn from one another, rely on one another. It's a very supportive, happy environment for me. It's probably the most supportive place I've ever worked at. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it just results in like genuine care for your team, which is kind of amazing that happens. But I think we all very much want to help each other out. And even though we are kind of in our own products, we're more than happy to step out and help out each other and even ask questions, just like Melissa said. We don't know all the answers, but I think anyone on our team is willing to answer a question from someone else.
That's a pretty awesome environment. Supportive, helpful.
It's a team, like a real team.
And we do have a lot of products too. So there needs to be a lot of specialization within that. Like even other very large sites, maybe you do e-commerce and there are different aspects of that. You might have a blog. There are other things that you have to focus on, but the pages where you sell products is what you care about for the most part. We do so many unique things here. So having people that are really good at each of those things is really important.
The next question in the Q&A is from Dustin. He says, do you have any advice for someone who's new to SEO and trying to get their foot in the door?
Network.
Network and be humble. There you go.
I think also if you're brand new, setting up your own website and just really pushing the limits will help you learn. But also, I wouldn't be afraid like going into an interview and saying that, right? Like, I'm new to the space, or I can appreciate when people say that they don't know something. But then if we bring them back for a second interview, they come back and they answer it, right? They went and did the research or have other findings. So for me, I like to look for the desire to learn and grow just as much as I look for somebody that may have experience. But I'll also say, back to the cultural thing, I'll pick somebody that fits culturally and may need a little bit of coaching over somebody that doesn't fit culturally or has a poor attitude. I mean, that's kind of hard to figure out in an interview, and has a ton of experience, right? Because we need to make sure that they fit with our culture. Otherwise, it's just not going to be the greatest experience.
My advice would be, I mean, it's great to be a well-rounded SEO. You don't want to ignore that, but pick a specialty and get really good at it. There's a lot of opportunity for that now, and the pool of applicants becomes a lot smaller in your specific specialty when you know something really well that most SEOs don't.
Yeah, I really dislike it when I hear someone say, I know everything about SEO. I don't think that's possible anymore. We know a little bit of everything, but we specialize in something. But I'm also a firm believer in that you have to keep learning and consistently learn new things. And like Chris said, at one point I had 80 different websites live. Many car related, real estate related, everything. I tested it out, all kinds of things. And that's really how I learned. But the more you learn, the more you find what you really love doing and what you're good at.
Yeah, I'll concur with that. In fact, I just tweeted, I think it was yesterday. Curiosity has probably been my most used trait as an SEO. You have to stay curious, and you have to, chase down the rabbit holes. Go on down. I mean, what's the threat of doing that? And I will also say, most of the most successful SEOs that I know didn't start out even knowing what SEO was. They just it's something that they eventually found themselves in. My degree is in literature and history. How's that useful ever, by the way? So I'm a little mad at my university for allowing me to focus on that, but whatever. But I know so many other people, like Ben Jariola out in California. He was a chemist. Nothing to do with SEO. I don't know what was everybody else's degree here, but I imagine it wasn't SEO, and most likely not in marketing.
Yeah, my BA was in psychology. My master's was in mental health. So, but you use all of that in marketing and reaching consumers. But look at Marie Haynes; she was a vet.
Yep, Dr. Marie Haynes, by the way. Make sure you say doctor. But I would also say, just as a bit of advice, if you are starting out, build your own website from the ground up. I would say do that and get it to rank for whatever it is you're trying to rank for. Make it a hobby website. I've built 4 or 5 hobby websites just for the fun of it, of building it from the ground up, from finding a host, buying the domain name, building, using templates to build the site, ranking, creating content, creating associated Twitter accounts, etc. So I would say definitely, make sure you're setting up your own personal sites just as testing grounds.
And you can sell them later.
It's true.
Also, another way is to do practice audits on sites that you think are cool. That's something I've recommended before. If you're not comfortable enough yet to actually get paid to do it, practice is a good way to try it out, and it's low stress.
I like that. I just did a video with work where we Samo and I like tore down a page from DoorDash. Now we got to look at some Cox Automotive pages for some cool video ideas. But we were basically like, why does this page work? Why do we think that it's working so well? Because it was worth an insane amount, basically, like driving tons of traffic, and that's so much fun. I wish more people would share stuff like that publicly, because I personally love to see different people's thought processes and like what they look at.
Yeah, Patrick, I'm part of my job is helping train some of those 40 plus analysts over in dealer.com, and one of the things they've really enjoyed a lot of was something I call forensic SEO. In fact, it's in such demand, they want me to do it again. And essentially what it is me saying, okay, we found this problem. This is how we fix it. Or we were seeing this result that we didn't like. How do we back our way into figuring out what the problem is, and then figuring out how to fix it, for that matter. So people, that sort of mind mapping / process, I think is really important for people to see. I wish, like you, I wish more people were doing that sort of forensic SEO, which that's where the panels came into play back at the conferences, those site clinic panels, when they weren't too brutal, were people using their mental processes to help sort of figure out someone else's problem and fix it for them, or help them fix it.
Yeah, exactly. That actually leads to a good question. I love this question from Bruce. What actually moves the needle SEO wise for Cox Automotive? What's the 20% of SEO work that gets you 80% of value? Pareto principle.
That's a Chris
It
question.
depends.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many site sections, and even though we are one big team and we help each other out, we are several moving parts. So like, a lot of, well, I'll let her speak to this, but a lot of what Melissa does is time sensitive and relevant to what's going on right now. Someone else asked about, how much time is working with a product team. Like, for the sections I work on, it's millions and millions and millions of pages. So big development projects are what moves the needle. Like making a change to an individual page can help, but it's not really the bulk of what we're doing or what's helping out the site.
Yeah, technical SEO is one of those. It's the best tool in your toolkit is technical SEO, because you can make one change and fix 10,000 problems or 100,000 problems or 1,000,000 problems.
We also had, what was it, 50 writers, 50 content writers on one team? That's got to be crazy amounts of content production.
Yeah, that's for the agency side of the business, because they're supporting, you figure Deal.com has 60% of the entire dealership market, so about 13,000 websites, and then their SEO service has a large portion of that they're servicing every month, and obviously that comes with content needs. So yeah, they're churning out a lot of content every single day.
I think I'll just add one more thing, and as we're getting into this a lot, it's reducing down can often come up with that 80% of the value, right? So I think it's even taking what we have today and refining and getting more of that 80% of value.
Are y'all, this is actually a question from Andrew. Are y'all using anything like AI or ML, machine learning at scale, like doing testing or executing at scale?
We're building it.
Okay. I know a lot of, well, I mean, y'all at least are using all the data you have to pull in and create tons of pages, I imagine, for different cars and everything. So even if it's not full on like AI, well, nothing's full on AI really. Y'all are at least building pages at what I assume is a very, very massive scale from your data.
Yeah, we have a lot of APIs because we also syndicate out data to insurance companies. So like there's a data swap between like what's getting registered out in the market. We own all the auction houses, so we know what they're selling for at auction. So yeah, there's a lot of data moving back and forth. In terms of like AI and trying to like scale stuff that way, we looked at a couple of other companies to partner with, but then we realized we should just build it ourselves. So and when at enterprise level, sometimes it comes down to build versus buy. If it doesn't make sense for us to build it ourselves, we'll buy it. If it doesn't make sense for us to buy it, then we'll build it.
That makes sense. How about like the A/B testing part of that question? Do y'all do any current well, I imagine content updates, like y'all probably are doing everything.
Yeah, we have a whole team dedicated to testing. So yeah,
many tests a week. It's constant tests running at all times on all areas of the site.
Any interesting ones you can share?
No, but I will say that it's definitely, again, like when you're in such a big organization, awareness of what's being tested, especially if sometimes those tests might break something unintentional, is also very key. So we make sure we have a good relationship with the testing team, because things have happened. But
cool. This is from Joshua. How much time or energy does the SEO team spend working with the product team to roll out new features and product improvements versus just straight SEO plays?
Again, depends on the department, but like, part of our site sits in like an area that we have a content management system and we can make quick changes. And some of our site requires big development updates to make changes. We work with the product. I mean, we sit in the product team, so we work with them every day. Our titles, most of us have product manager in our titles because we work directly with the scrum teams, product owners. We have bandwidth that we can use to benefit the site, and we have a roadmap just like any other product manager to accomplish things within the SEO world. Like Chris mentioned earlier, the SVP has a background in SEO, so they definitely value that, and they make sure that a certain amount of time is allocated to SEO each quarter. So that's a huge benefit for us.
I think also what Keith was talking about before is where you sit versus sitting in marketing. And I observe this too, because I used to sit in an agency and be on the more marketing side, where I feel like you're seeing the end result and then having to go backward to fix. Whereas sitting in product's a lot of advantage because you're on the ground with everyone developing things. So you can catch things ahead of time to kind of triage before something goes live in the wild for the most part.
Y'all are working with like so many different teams, and I think you're all like remote, right? Everyone works different area. I think Melissa's like Florida, and Matt's here, and Keith's in Texas. Plus with COVID, like you're not sitting with your developers, your stakeholder. I mean, I guess you are on maybe meetings, but I'm curious, how can you get things pushed through, like advocating for SEO? When you're not like face to face with people?
I've always worked from home, so I don't know if it's that much more difficult. I mean, it's just a discussion. It's just a different way of discussing, right?
Yeah. Projections. I mean, pushing things based off of what's important. I know that this probably hurts a lot of SEOs to hear. It's kind of painful, but like sometimes you can't follow every best practice perfectly. If there are other things in the queue that are more important from other teams, you kind of have to pick and choose what's important to do. We have a really long list of items that we want to accomplish, but some of them are just less important than things that other teams are working on. And if you're not willing to admit that and be a team player, and you kind of cry wolf with every SEO issue that comes up, you're probably not going to get a lot accomplished.
Yeah, it's a lot about providing the data to back up what you're claiming that you need to have worked on. If you can't provide them with a projected ROI, some level of benefit that either matches or beats something that they're already working on, they're not going to give you the priority. And that's doesn't really matter where you're located, if that's the case. Because if you're a data driven business, the data will always give you the priority you need.
Yeah, just backing up what Matt said, that was the hardest thing for me coming into enterprise. Was I was used to just logging in and fixing anything that was broken. If that meant it was 2 o'clock in the morning and I was fixing something in the CMS, that's what I was doing to make it. It's a different kind, and I have to say it's more relaxing because everything takes a little bit longer in enterprise. But you have to see everybody else's perspective. It isn't just you.
I mean, I hate to say networking, but generally in an organization that's as large as ours, like you want to make the opportunity to know that you're a helpful person, that you're coming to a conversation not with demands, but you're being open, like Matt was saying, like you're reasonable, you understand there's different priorities in the business. Make contact. Sometimes our company does a ton of fun stuff. So it definitely gives you an opportunity to talk to people that you may never work with on a daily basis, but down the road, they may remember you. And then I would say also, like Chris mentioned before, like our SVPs, they have an SEO background and they trust us. So definitely operating with like building some trust and working right up to that, I think is pretty easy to get buy-in, even remote.
Yeah. And on the remote point, this might sound a little bit silly, but kind of humanize yourself. Have small talk conversations with people in meetings. You don't have to talk about work all the time. If you're just an SEO backlog, you might not get as much work done, but if you can have a normal conversation with someone and they see you as a person that they're working with, that can help a lot.
Yeah, we talk way too much about Netflix or what movie is coming, but it's also good for bonding. I mean, everybody knows what sport team somebody loves, and I think that's an important, because if you're in an office, there's going to be that water cooler talk anyway. People just need to get away from their desk. So I think Cox is very good about including that throughout the day.
Yeah, so y'all kind of figured out how to do the in-house like bonding and the things that, I don't know, make a team stronger, but still do it remotely, which is really cool. I think we have some more questions. Oh, Gene, you're killing me. What's your favorite tool for helping to do what you have to do? Gene says, I love SEMrush because of the keyword help versus competitors. What is your favorite tool? What is your stack? Disclaimer, I work for Ahrefs, so I needed to make sure that I said that this was Gene's words. Actually, I think SEMrush is a great tool too. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I am in Ahrefs, but I do live in SEMrush and GSC. Competitive analysis is an all-day thing for me. So any tool we have, I'm in trying to figure out different angles.
Yeah, I use a lot of everything, but I'll stay neutral and say GSC. That's my favorite tool.
As a technical SEO, I spend a lot of time in Google Search Console. A lot. Here recently, though, I dug into Bing Webmaster Tools, which I hadn't done in like a year, and I feel bad about that because it's a really great set of tools that are available to you, even though very few people use Bing by comparison. But it is a really good tool set. So GSC is really good. I mean, obviously crawlers are quite important for small crawls. I always recommend something like a Screaming Frog, but for big ongoing crawls, you want to use something bigger, like a deep crawl or a possibly Content King. That I feel like Content King is like, shooting a cockroach with a bazooka or something sometimes, because it's a pretty intense tool, but I do like it. Ahrefs, obviously, I'm sorry, Ahrefs is is a great tool. I need to talk to you, Patrick, about the whole lost link thing, because that's now hidden in like the classic view, and I don't like that. I need that back out in the forefront. So
I don't know what you mean by that, but yeah, hit me up after the call.
Links lost. The links that because that's, I think,
like the calendar view. I don't want to support it. Message me on Twitter.
We'll do that
later. Yeah,
we'll talk about it. But I do like Ahrefs.
I like the Bing Webmaster Tools tip. Even if you don't care about Bing traffic, it has a lot of cool things in there that GSC doesn't have that can help even with Google search.
Mm-hmm.
Live search results too. Chrome Dev Tools is helpful.
I'm really bland. I like Excel.
Yeah, but he says that, and he's like this savant of Excel. It drives me like crazy. I feel like a first grader asking him questions. He's like, oh.
Or Python.
Yeah.
Those are my two. I use Excel all the time, so if I can export the data into Excel, but everybody else on the call, like Melissa, Ellen, Keith, and Matt, they're in the weeds a lot more than I am. So hence Excel. I will say I did fight for the budget for Ahrefs, though.
He did.
You got to use pandas in Python, and it's basically everything's in Excel, but Python, sort of. Brian asks, since you have a specialty, I'd love to hear what you feel are the most critical skills, tactics, and tools necessary in order to be successful. Within reason, of course. I know those lists could get long.
skills, let's go
we
with
kind of
this.
did the tools part. Yeah. So critical
Right.
skills or tactics.
I think skills in an enterprise level, you have to be ready to go and meet with any team and make them feel comfortable working with you. Right. I mean, we meet new people every day. So I think that is a very important skill. I am never the person in the room that acts like I know it all. I just want to make them feel comfortable and learn from them. That's the other thing, is learning from everyone. I don't know if you call that a skill, but you have to go into every meeting anticipating you're going to learn something really important that could impact the entire company. And I feel like a lot of SEOs that I have met in the past are always trying to prove that they know a lot, and you don't have to do that, at least at Cox. And I wouldn't think enterprise as a whole. I think you just need to be able to go in and work well with others, learn what's important to them, figure out how you're going to work together. I think that would probably be the biggest, because there's so many freaking teams, so many different people, so many different personalities. If you can't make it work with anybody with any personality, then you're probably going to have struggles.
With all those teams, like, you probably have to be opportunistic also, because they're working on their own timelines, their own workflows, and I'm sure they come to you like at the last minute, and you have to just jump right in, I'm assuming, and be ready to go when they finally want to go. Because I know, like, I worked in this environment. You tell people, do this, do this, do this, and then like nothing happens, but then suddenly everyone's like hitting you up all at once. How do you like manage those expectations? Like, how do you, well, you have a big enough team, you might be able to just field it all.
I don't feel like we have that situation, do we, Keith? I mean, Art, maybe it was like that at IBM.
I personally do get a lot of the analysts reaching out to me directly and asking me questions, and I just have to fit it in. It's just one of those things. Some of the things you can't control, and sometimes there's a potentially high priority item that pops up, and you find out that it's not. But certainly, if as Melissa mentioned, if they're comfortable talking to you, they're going to reach out to you and ask you for help in certain situations, and you can either fix the problem or set them right and put them on the right path to fixing their problem. But I don't know if on the other side of the equation, if you guys are having a lot of people reach out to you directly.
I have a lot of questions, but it's not like I have to necessarily rush all the time.
A lot of questions, but it's a good thing, because that means that they care about SEO and they're trying to incorporate it into their day, and they know you and remember you and think about SEO when they're doing the things that they do. And then when you have work that needs done, they're good teammates to work with to get that work done, because they're already familiar with SEO and the things that you care about.
And don't you feel, Matt, that when all these people do reach out, it's because we built trust with them, that they could do that?
Absolutely. And they will literally say that, like, yeah, reaching out to you because you're vocal about SEO, and we know that you've done good things, and SEO is important because your team has really pushed that the last several years. So it makes, we're a growing part of the organization, and that's never a negative thing, even if it ends up eating up more of your bandwidth than you'd like.
I'd say one more is being able to set expectations. I know that's kind of broad, but it's something that I've learned over the years, right? Don't take on more than you'll actually be able to produce is important. Be reasonable with your turnaround times, because if you tell someone it's going to be ready and it's not, and then you're failing on that. So knowing what you can handle is important. Because again, same thing, it ties back to trust. And then also knowing your limits. We don't know all the engineering questions, but don't pretend like you know the engineering questions sometimes. Just be open. They're going to respect you a lot more if you say, I don't know, than if you come up with some fluff answer. So.
And I think, Ellen, it's nice that we can say that, because I feel like a lot of agency people are people working on their own as consultants or even working for people, they don't get to create limits or expectations. They're just told, fix it, work all the time. That's why I love this. I get regular hours. I get dinner with my family. It's just a normal work environment.
I mean, I guess we do get our fires every now and then. I'm not saying like we never take on something if it's, if someone reaches out to you and it's important, definitely help out.
Right. But I just feel bad. I don't miss the agency side or the company that expects you to get up at midnight and fix something. We're kind of blessed with enterprise. We don't have that as much, but we still do set expectations. And I always say to people, you got to set that your emergency is not my emergency. Sometimes people, more with clients, not so much with enterprise, but.
So would you all choose in-house or enterprise over an agency?
100%.
Yeah.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I mean, I would, which is why I'm here. But I think it really depends on personality for if that's the right choice. I mean, some people just really love that fast-paced agency type of work. So if that's you, then in-house is probably not going to be the kind of thing that you like. They can be very, very different.
And probably what organization you're working for, because you could be in-house and not fun.
Yeah. I feel dumb for working the way that I did for the last 10 years. It was always 2 different companies. I wanted my freedom. I thought I want my freedom, and I actually had far less freedom because I worked so much, so this is just it's calm. It's more relaxed, even though the pressure is a little more, because I know I actually called Keith after I started at Cox because Chris said, I trust you to make this decision. And I called Keith and I'm like, they're trusting me with the decision they shouldn't be trusting me with yet. And he's like, this is how it works. So there's a little more pressure from that side, but it's also really healthy to have people trust you.
Awesome. There's a question from Andrew. In an enterprise ecosystem, what's the most important relationship for an SEO team member to make? I know you said earlier, you talked about like interacting with a bunch of different teams and kind of doing the water cooler talk, but who do you feel like has, I just had a cat jump up, sorry, has had like the most impact or been the best like relationship to make?
I want to say, I mean, as much as I think that you need to have an executive on your side all the time, and it really helps that we have an SVP that was a former SEO himself, so he's able to put a fire under things for sure. That's great firepower to have, but the most effective relationships I've had as an in-house SEO, even beyond Cox, have always been the individual contributor developers, people who on a regular basis. And this is from a technical perspective. From a content perspective, maybe Melissa can give a different answer than I give, but having a developer who can noodle on some of these problems in their spare time and come up with solutions has been invaluable. It's saved my skin a half dozen times at least. So I would say certainly an individual contributor like a developer or an architect of some sort on the back end.
For me, Chris was my manager when I started. I think everybody needs a Chris to ease you in and help you learn the ins and outs of enterprise and to be supportive. And then on the content side, everybody that you're depending on, you kind of have to find a way to support them in multiple ways, because being a writer and being an editor is not an easy thing. And I've done it, and I know there's burnout that comes with it. So being a support to them and building that relationship.
I agree with both of those answers, but I would also say the product owners for the products you work on, they make a lot of the important decisions on what goes through. So if you can't convince them that SEO is worthwhile, then you're probably not going to get a lot done.
This is where my answer is going to vary a little bit different, right? Because to Matt's point, if you can't get the product owners buy-in, right, that's where you need like other leadership members that have a really good working relationship to get the work pushed through and negotiate that. So my peers for me are crucial. It's also good to have a relationship with the executives or somebody on the executive team to some extent. But I would, as an individual contributor, I would say a PM or product manager, whoever is overseeing that product line, would be probably one of the best relationships you can have.
Sounds like you need to work with a lot of different people.
Yeah, I was just sitting here realizing, like, obviously the paid search team, we have team members that work directly and closely with that team, and building that relationship as well is pretty important.
With that many initiatives, that many teams, how do y'all manage to get like integrated with all of them? Because then you're gonna have to work with different teams to get your project ideas through, and maybe even getting budget or new hires from executives. Like, how does all that work? That's vague.
Oh, I guess I'll take this one again. So each product line has their own product manager, and under that product manager, they have a number of Scrum teams. So listings may have 3, 4 onshore, offshore teams. So we really align each person with that product manager and that and those Scrum teams. So like with Matt, in Matt's case, like listings is a pretty big piece of the business for Autotrader. So that's why it has probably more Scrum teams than some other areas. But we align him with the product manager over there and make sure that they're on the same page to get everything pushed through that we need to.
Yeah. One thing I would just kind of add, because I see the question, there's nothing I do has one goal, right? It's only going to, this little initiative is going to do X. It's going to find a way to support my team with different initiatives across. Like Matt knows I'm always trying to do things to support Matt's side. Dawn, I love to support. Ellen, not so much Keith, because Keith is with DDC. But when I'm creating an initiative, I'm trying to figure out, here's the SEO side, and here's 3 or 4 other things that this will also serve. So it isn't just, there's just not one sole purpose for an initiative. Does that make sense?
I think there's a lot of opportunity for the teams to come together too and stay on the same page. Sometimes we'll all unite behind like one objective. Let's say it's grow value, right? That's when you'll have product and marketing and everyone kind of contributing together and creating more like a holistic plan, right? How are all these parts going to fit together? Then those holistic plans, like at this level, everything funnels up. So I feel like there's always a level of people who are looking at the bigger picture.
And the company's is pretty good at telling us this is coming. So we can plan, hey, you know what we could do, which is nice.
Yeah, and each quarter we set our OKRs, or operating key results. So we know like what we need to work towards as a team, and not like as an SEO team, but as a product team. So it's more to Alan's point, it's a more holistic view of where we're trying to push.
Next question is Victor. Are you an enterprise SEO if you don't have href lang issues? Well, yeah, y'all are going to operate all over the world, right? It's not
We
just US.
We have different sites. They're not all combined into one site. We do have a site in Brazil that was specifically built for that market. We have a site in Canada that was specifically built for that market. There's one in Australia. There's probably some other ones that I don't remember, but long story short, we really don't combine all those multi-languages onto the US sites.
Gotcha. I kind of wonder, actually, going back to Melissa's yellow car thing, I haven't looked at that, but I wonder if some of that isn't caused by hreflang. It wouldn't surprise me if they just basically put out duplicate content for other countries, especially since they were like, what was it, UK, Australia? I think it's fairly common.
New Zealand, Israel, but I'll also say this real quick. Even for non-car related terms, I'm seeing international sites creeping in. Don't know why.
Interesting. So it could be a legit like bad results from Google.
It's been going on for like 8 months. It's creeping in and getting worse and worse. So I don't know what they're doing.
We're almost at time, so I'm going to go with another fun question. Does the SEO team have its own NCAA tourney challenge, and who do you have?
That one's for you, Keith.
Yeah, I've got the Bears to win the whole thing. Just kidding. I don't know sports, but we just had this discussion on Slack earlier, where our entire CapG product team has a bracket challenge going on right now, and I asked, "Am I required to join this?" And they assured me that it was not required. So, but I have a feeling that maybe this team's going to have a winner or two on it. I don't know.
Well, I know nothing about basketball. I'm a football person, but last year I was number 7 because I looked at all the stats and chose well, and I spent way too long today choosing the brackets.
Yeah, and that email went out to like 4,600 people.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
There's another question.
They do have a lot of cool prizes, so it's worth it.
I think Gene was on your Slack to be able to see or be able to ask that question. He like knows what's going on. Dustin asked, what is Keith's thought on the Obi-Wan Kenobi series? And something tells me Melissa also has something to say on this.
Hey, it's I'm excited about it. I never make a judgment beforehand based on previews, so I'm going to be optimistic about it, even though there is a fat-headed Utapawan that's in the commercials. I'm not even gonna complain about that too much. So
I'm just happy to see Obi-Wan. I just pray they don't do what they did in the beginning of Boba Fett. I'm gonna be really upset. So Boba Fett ended up fine, but Keith and I were not happy in the beginning. So
true.
Just want to see Obi-Wan. That's all I want.
Melissa is the light
part of that. My favorite part of that is like the Obi-Wan in the original movies is like 10 years older than he is in real life now.
Yeah, people didn't age well in Hollywood 20 years ago. Wilford Brimley was my age when he was playing a retiree in a nursing home in Cocoon. And I don't think I look nearly as bad as Wilford Brimley did back then. So
how old was he in the diabetes commercial? Because
he's probably 55 at that point, I think.
That's the only reason I even know who that person is for that commercial.
Diabetes.
Diabetes. Yeah. This is the kind of conversations we have, Patrick.
Yeah, it is. This is how we keep our sanity at work.
All right. I think we have just one unanswered user question, and then I'm going to let you all go, or we'll go back to like the networking so you can say, hey, ask questions that you're afraid to ask here for a bit. The last question is from Robert. He says, do you rely on tools for rank tracking? And how do you interpret SERP fluctuations for thousands of keywords? And he has some additional comments that the company he works for has a main site about software issues and guides for tech-savvy monetizing through affiliate marketing. And we track sales and traffic on a dashboard on GDS. I create clusters for main topics and correlate with products that we affiliate with and export combined data from GSE and dashboard on Google Sheets where I analyze it, but I end up verifying the SERP manually. And going back to the initial question, do you rely on tools for rank tracking, and how do you interpret SERP fluctuations for thousands of keywords?
That's all on Melissa there. She is our fluctuations expert.
We discuss fluctuations a lot, but I mean, we do use rank tracking, but with the way the SERPs have been recently, we're all doing it by hand and verifying with one another because things change and shift by the day depending on Google. I don't know, Matt, what do you want to say? Because you track a lot like me.
Yeah, I mean, even at the enterprise level, you can't track everything. I mean, it's definitely more than thousands of keywords. It's like more like hundreds of thousands of keywords. So, I mean, we just pick a good sample of keywords to track and then use tools that look at keywords at scale to see fluctuations. So just a combination of the two.
Yeah, and the rank tracking may say one thing in GSE or analytics says something else. So
trends are important, and then you search on your own and it's completely different. I mean, trends are far more important than individual rankings. We don't get too hung up on, like this keyword moved one spot this day. It's just looking at trends over time.
Cool. And if y'all don't mind, one more. Eric, there's a Q&A section for questions. I'm sorry I missed your question in the chat on link building. Eric asks, is ongoing link building important, and how do you do it?
Okay, I did answer this in the chat part. We don't have to actively link build, which is nice for us, but we provide so much data from Cox Automotive, information about cars and like in our car news, that the links just naturally come. So
yeah, I to echo that, it's probably more about what would be a really cool resource with what we have available that we could put out there that could earn links.
Yeah, and Patrick, you're familiar with this because you were at IBM same time as I was, and it was the same back at Dell. We didn't really focus on link building, and I think this may be one of those benefits of being a large brand, a well-known brand, is that you will attract links naturally. And I do feel like I have an advantage that smaller, maybe even new sites don't have, and that I don't have to think about link building as much. It is something that comes into play when I do look at links, especially if I'm looking at a technical issue and I want to see what sort of what sort of responses Ahrefs is getting when they take a look at the links that are coming into our sites, and what the responses are coming back from those sites, for example. So from a technical perspective, I look at the links, but I don't hyper focus on link building. And in fact, I think that's one of those things where you really have to gauge what is the potential impact of gaining a link. What is the potential impact of Google finding that I have unnaturally built a link and penalizing me as a result? And do I want to play that game or not? So,
and as always with content, brand awareness is critical if you're hoping to get links and trust. So everything has to be valid that's stated. And that is not easy when it comes to 365 different car models. It's a lot of fact checking and making sure, because if we lose the brand trust, then people are going to stop linking. So
I would imagine that if someone, just a third party, like looked at your link profile, they might even consider it spammy by default, because car enthusiasts, they hang out on a lot of forums. I'm willing to bet like tons and tons of the links to your sites are all from forums, which a lot of SEOs would be like, oh no, someone like spammed a bunch of forum links. But
We do actively have an expert that talks on the news all the time. We have PR people, so that helps us get really solid, good links.
That's awesome.
Nothing
Data
to
driven.
add myself, but I know Don on our team is listening in, and he had some good thoughts on this. So maybe he'll stick around after and comment at one of the tables.
Awesome. Well, speaking of the tables, I appreciate your time, all of you. So thank you so much for joining. I think that's roughly an hour, maybe a little longer, kept you over. I'm going to end the session, and this is going to throw everyone back to the table view. So if you want to hang out there, talk with a few more minutes, ask some questions there. I would imagine they've got a few more minutes to stick around. If not, thank you all so much. I really appreciate you being here. Keith, I'm going to hit you up on your other question. Yeah, everyone, have a good night.
Thanks, Patrick.